All right, so we might want to move on to the next point, a traffic stop, which is obviously
Vehicle
different.
stop,
A
yes.
vehicle stop, okay, with the correct term, vehicle stop. And could you define that for us, what that experience is, and what is the passenger, the driver, what are we responsible to do in that instant?
Vehicle stops could be very tricky, dangerous, and stuff like that. Technically speaking, okay, if an individual or individuals are pulled over pretty much by the police, it should be a reason on why these officers are basically stopping and pulling over this vehicle.
Okay, so in that instance, is the officer required to describe the reasoning for the stop?
Absolutely, because it's taught.
And they're required to do it initially, like right at the beginning?
Like as soon as you roll your
Yes.
window down and you say, officer, why am I being
technically
pulled
speaking,
over?
when I was teaching at the police academy, this is the 1, 2, 3 step. If I stopped the vehicle, and this is what I did when I had to train the recruits when I was an instructor in the police academy. You stop a vehicle, let's say, for instance, brake light is out. Let's just use that as an example. Brake light is out. I approach the individual. I do the car stop. They pull over. I approach the car. Technically, they're trained like this. How you doing? Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Officer Jones. The reason why I'm stopping you is because your tail light is out, or your headlight is out. Can I have your license and registration? Technically, clear cut and dry, that's technically how, when I taught the recruits in the police academy, that's how that was taught.
One thing I could say just from a legal perspective is that even if that's the proper way that it should be done, the reality is that if for whatever reason an officer doesn't do it in that kind of chronology, that whereas it's different if you're stopped in the street or in your home, you are, as a civilian, you are still required to provide your identification, irrespective of whether you've been given the reason. So whether procedurally you should have been given it first, you are still, the requirement is different as opposed to being in the street or somewhere else. You're absolutely required to still provide that information to them. And in that case, it's very distinctly different.
And a traffic stop.
And a traffic stop. You're absolutely required, whether, again, as Keith mentioned, whether or not they've given you that courtesy in providing it, as he said, they've been taught to do. Even if they haven't, you don't have the right to then not comply and provide your ID. You have to do it in that case legally.
I think that point has been made clear. At what point, when a police officer asks you to exit the vehicle, after supplying my identification, insurance card, registration, and I'm asked to now exit the vehicle?
Well, it all depends on pretty much like the situation, because it could be a different scenario. And like I said, I'll do like another example. Once you you provide, let's say, your driver's license.
Okay, no, let me back up so I don't paint you into a corner. More specifically, when I've been told I've been pulled over because a headlight is out or tail light is out, I give you all of my stuff.
Right.
At that point, I'm assuming everything is above board.
Right.
You go back to your car. When you reappear, I'm expecting to be issued a ticket. If everything is in order with all of my paperwork, and it's just my taillight is out.
Right.
At that point, if they ask me to exit my vehicle, what would prompt them to do that? And if in fact, do I have to comply? Because if everything is in order, and in the normal, perfect world, I should be issued a citation and I should be allowed to go about my business.
Right. Technically, yes. If everything is in order, meaning like you don't have your license is suspended, or you don't have a warrant. Right. If everything comes back clean, I really don't understand why an officer is asking you to step out of the car, unless while, say like they're bringing your ID and stuff back. Say one example. Let's say I'm returning your identification, or something like that, and I happen to see like some contraband or weapon or something like that, basically like in the back of the car seat, because it's out in plain view. Right. Everything is out pretty much like in plain view.
Well, one of the things we know prior to marijuana being legalized, and as it is presently, it would be they smell marijuana in the car, even if they didn't smell marijuana in the car. And I know that's obviously something that is speculative.
Right.
But it's something you can always just throw out there.
Right.
And again, it's been understood that these kind of tactics, were used to just, because they may be just profiling.
Right.
And wanted to have a reason to go beyond just a simple traffic stop. Or maybe, in fact, there was no tail light out. I mean, because it isn't like they walk you around to the back of the car to show you that it's out.
Right. Absolutely.
So a lot of these things could have just been done as reasons to make a stop of what they might have considered a suspicious vehicle or just profiling. So again, you follow all these procedures, you do everything that we're supposed to do as civilians, and then you hope that that everything goes according to as it should. But we all can attest that there are instances where it didn't go as that, because the intentions was other than just I needed a reason to pull you over, and I made up whatever. I smell marijuana, because one other thing, you look suspicious. Is that in of itself enough of a reason?
Let's say pretty much like a vehicle, like say if a person may be like intox or something like that, where they're swerving, a little bit,
right?
And stuff like that, then you prompt to basically pull over the vehicle.
Oh, absolutely.
But just because I'm quite sure there probably are some officers,
right?
There are officers that were out there basically doing that, but that's against procedures.
Okay, so that's great. So as civilians, and we need to understand this, it's not in your best interest, even at that point, to be disobedient.
Right. Because if I can elaborate on it, it's basically we used to teach a class pretty much. Sometime I teach it up to high school students and stuff like that. It's called What to Do When Stopped by the Police.
Right.
Basically, rather if there's a car stop or you stopped on foot, but let's even say pretty much like the car stop. I mean, technically, so things won't, get out of hand, get out of order or whatever, I would basically just suggest pretty much that you just comply pretty much with the officer. Now, if it comes to where there's something where you feel that you was treated unjust,
right,
or something like that, there are procedures where a civilian can file a complaint against a police officer.
And what does that look like?
Well, basically, it's a new thing that they have. Well, I'm not saying new. I think it came out 2017, 2018. It's called the Right to Know Act, right? Every New York City resident should know what the Right to Know Act is. The Right to Know Act means basically, if you feel that, let's say you got pulled over for whatever reason and you felt that you was mistreated pretty much by an officer, you have basically everyone has a right to ask an officer for his or her name and shield, right? It is patrol guide procedures. Any civilian that asks an officer for their name and shield, that officers have to produce it to that civilian, right? And that's actually written in the patrol guide. Now, the Right to Know Act, this is basically what the Right to Know Act is basically, all right, you feel that you want to file a complaint. A lot of times the public needs to educate themselves on who is Civilian Complaint Review Board. This is CCRB. Those are initials for Civilian Complaint Review Board, right? The public thinks that this consists of law enforcement or whatever. Civilian Complaint Review Board are civilians. Technically now, there's a procedure where you can file a complaint. You can file a complaint with CCRB, or you can go to the precinct to also file a complaint. But a lot of people are not comfortable in going to the precinct and filing a complaint against an officer. So this is where you can file a complaint with CCRB. The Right to Know Act, basically what the Right to Know Act is, where you fill out the paperwork, you'll file a complaint. Now, because you file that complaint and it's the Right to Know Act, now everyone there can actually be a hearing where the video footage shows the officer's interaction.
Okay, so let me ask a question in regards to that. With every stop, are police officers required to have their recorders on, either the stop on the streets or a traffic stop, or even when they appear at your home?
Right. Yes, technically speaking, if you have the body cam, because that's what it's called, it's called a body cam. Anytime that you have that interaction with the public, It's in both parties' interests, that.
But procedurally, are you guys required to turn?
They should be on.
But we know factually
basically
that doesn't
record.
happen all the time.
Unfortunately,
Okay, but that would be a reason or grievance to file. If you had an exchange with law enforcement and they stated the camera wasn't on, that would.
Well, at that moment at the stop, you wouldn't know if the camera.
So how do you make that determination? Because I want to file a complaint.
Once they start doing an investigation, they have to look into and retrieve that.
Okay.
The actual video.
So this would be one of the things I would request in my complaint if I was to file one.
Yes.
That I would like to see the video recording from
right.
The
when you filling out the paperwork, and I'll just ask everyone, when they get a chance, Google Right to Know Act of New York City, and it explains everything. But that's when it will come out, rather if the video footage was on or the video footage wasn't on.
Okay.
I think that brings across, and just to kind of piggyback on your question in terms of are you required to get out the car, just basically the answer to that, the short answer to that legally is you kind of are required to comply. Again, within the car, it's very different in terms of your rights within that car are much more limited. Now, you may be required to get out the car. You aren't then required to allow the person to search without there being probable cause. But at that point in time, you necessarily can't stop it. So then,
so when I exit the vehicles, I'm allowing. Do I have the right to say I don't want you searching me?
Absolutely.
But that carries little validity or weight, because once I'm asked to exit the car, I'm assuming for a reason.
You're correct, and this kind of goes to the point of what Keith mentioned about the body cam is that it's not something. Well, first of all, it needs to be stated that citizens are allowed to record their interactions with the police. That's legally allowed.
Yes.
Supreme Court, many courts have allowed that. Where the restrictions come with that are obviously, especially in a vehicle, you don't want to be fumbling with equipment.
Yes.
Where your hands are not visible.
Right.
I mean, you don't want it to be where it's interfering with the interaction. But if you're able to reasonably, without putting yourself in jeopardy, in danger, to pull the equipment out, you are legally allowed to record. And whether they tell you don't record it, their words on that don't matter. You're allowed to do it. Ironically, you can't secretly audio record in New York State an officer or any person for that matter.
Even an incident like that?
You could video record. And if they know they're being recorded in the audio, then it's legally allowed. But there's case law that's still pending of whether or not just audio, if the officer doesn't know he's recorded, whether or not the audio, because New York State just happens to be one where where both parties have to be aware that they're being right. So so ironically, the audio component. But if you tell the person I'm recording, he knows he's been put on notice, and it doesn't matter. So that would go. So I think it's actually one of those things where you cannot necessarily trust. We know body cams are being put out there more and more, but we also know that they're not necessarily being turned on, conveniently or not. That there's more and more technology, whether it's you recording it on your phone or having some other kind of equipment. Those kind of interactions are, I think, important for civilians to record their interactions with the police, because at that point in time, particularly if they've complied and they haven't done anything, it would show evidence of their innocence. And I think those are things, as technology is evolving, those are actually going to be citizens' best weapons to kind of fighting those things that we know have been going on forever.
Right. So we're having two conversations. One, we know ideally what you want to do to protect yourself as a civilian. But secondly, by having Keith here, he's clarifying and being specific as to what the procedures are. So we sort of have an understanding as what one is versus the other, and how they both sort of play hand in hand.
Right. We're balancing what the procedures are with actually what the rights are, and sometimes they don't coincide. But at that point in time, as a civilian, you're still, in most cases, going to have to, particularly in a vehicle, the level in which you have to comply is far greater than any of the other circumstances. But that's where, if you don't trust that the officer body cam will vindicate you, where your own ability and your right to record their interaction may make everybody at least more accountable. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll be safer, but at least minimally it'll be more accountability on every. And if you look at the situations that we've all seen, the public that have really brought this to a height of consciousness, is because those interactions were recorded.
Right.
The reality is those things are happening all the time. Well, not all, but they're happening too frequently without us knowing the circumstances. They're put on a police report. We may or may not know what the circumstances were, but it was those ones that are recorded where we see it, where we're allowed to have kind of those emotional reactions. And I think the more that happens, it'll eventually change public opinion enough, because if the George Floyd situation isn't recorded the way it is, they list it as something else. You never know what happens, but it allows for policy and things to take place subsequently. So I think at the end of the day, the fact that citizens are allowed, and it's their right to record their interactions with the police, I think it's, and I don't know if you agree with that, I think it's something that's really important, because you're not just trusting with the Right to Know Act.
Right.
Now you have something else to kind of help vindicate you if you haven't done anything in those situations.